Hey everyone, it's Jessica Edwards in Wilmington, North Carolina. So we often talk about at this time of year, as we approach the last year, we're in the last couple months of the year, we approach the end of the year, we're always talking about, whether or not you should, it's a plus or minus to sell during those months. But we often don't talk a lot about buyers. And from a buyer's perspective, if it's a good thing or not to be looking for a property around, Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays. Something to think about is if you are a buyer, yes, there's typically going to be in most markets less inventory on the market during those holiday months, which can be a good thing for a seller because they have less properties to compete with, so they don't have as much competition. But from a buyer's perspective, and then for a seller. Sorry, I'm going back and forth, but for a seller, it also can be good because although you have less buyers coming through your house, you have less buyers in the market, typically the quality of the buyers are a lot better. So it can actually be a really good thing for a seller to sell during the holiday months. Now, on the flip side of that, for a buyer, it can actually be a very good thing for a buyer to look at property and purchase at the same time of year. Yes, we can find positives and negatives on each side, buying and selling. But the positives from the selling we talked about, from a buying perspective, like we just said about sellers, there are less buyers in the market. So those sellers are probably having a lot less showings on their property. So meaning that instead of having, in April or May, where maybe they would have, 6 or 8 showings in a specific time frame, maybe now they're only having 2 or 3 at this time of year. And I'm just totally throwing those numbers out there. So from a buyer's perspective, yes, you're going to have less things to look at. However, a couple things. The sellers are having less buyers, so they may feel a little bit more like they need you a little bit more just because there's less activity, there's less people looking at their house. The other thing is you don't know people's situations financially, taxes, whatever, and they may need to sell and move that property by December 31st for tax purposes for that year. So you never know that, it could be a situation where if it's a buyer, if you find the house that's right for you and that you love and you make an offer on it, it could actually be a really good thing because that seller may be willing to negotiate more because they may feel a little bit more urgency since they have less buyers looking at it. And they may really need to sort of clear that property, whether it's a primary residence or not, in that tax year or in that year, before the 31st of December. So something to think about on both sides. Yes, again, there's positives and negatives to both, but it can be a really, really good time for a seller and for a buyer. And it's kind of funny because the positives for the seller can also be, the positives for a buyer. You can kind of spin it. So anyways, just thinking about that. I always have a lot of questions about that at this time of year. If you have any questions or comments or you disagree, please feel free to email me at JessicaEdwards@seacoastrealty.com. And of course, you can always check us out at thecarolinasfinest.com. Thanks so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.